What if I told you that the 1980s, a decade of neon excess and blockbuster mania, also birthed some of the most controversial films ever made? These movies were so raw, rebellious, and boundary-pushing that governments banned them, theaters refused them, and critics condemned them. Yet today, they're hailed as cult classics or misunderstood masterpieces. Ready to dive into the forbidden? Let's explore 12 banned movies that were too hot for the 80s, but are now just a click away. 12. Guinea Pig. Devil's Experiment, 1985. Imagine a film so convincingly brutal, it triggered an international FBI investigation. That's the legacy of Guinea Pig. Devil's Experiment, the first entry in a notorious Japanese series designed to test the limits of on-screen carnage. The plot is chillingly simple. A group of men in black suits kidnaps a woman and subjects her to a series of torturous experiments to document the human body's breaking point. We're talking hitting, kicking, burning, and even gouging out an eye, all presented with a cold, clinical detachment that makes it feel like a snuff film. The 1980s were the golden age of direct-to-video horror in Japan, and this film took that ethos to its most extreme conclusion. The controversy wasn't just about the gore, it was about the implication of reality. The film was marketed on the rumor that it was a genuine murder tape, a claim that sent shockwaves through the global film community. The legend goes that actor Charlie Sheen somehow got a copy, was utterly convinced of its authenticity, and immediately contacted the FBI. The feds, taking the claim seriously, launched an investigation that reached all the way to Tokyo. Japanese authorities interrogated the producers, who were forced to demonstrate their special effects techniques in court to prove they hadn't actually killed someone. The film was banned in numerous countries and became a bootleg legend traded among horror aficionados. Today, it's available on specialty streaming sites, a grim artifact of a bygone era of transgressive cinema. It's less a movie and more a cinematic endurance test, a fascinating look at how far filmmakers were willing to go to shock an audience desensitized by the slasher boom. Its influence can be seen in later torture porn franchises like Hostel and Saw, though none have matched its raw, unfiltered sense of dread. 11. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Before the Blair Witch Project found footage, there was Cannibal Holocaust, a film so depraved and realistic that its director was arrested for murder. This Italian exploitation gem follows a rescue team venturing into the Amazon Green Inferno to find a missing documentary crew known as the Film Team. What they discover are the crew's battered cans of film, which reveal the team's descent into madness, rape, and the brutal murder of indigenous tribespeople. Director Ruggero Deodato shot the film in a guerrilla style, blending real documentary footage with staged scenes to create a seamless, horrifying illusion of reality. The controversy, however, went far beyond its faux documentary structure. The film features multiple, unsimulated killings of animals: a muskrat, a pig, a monkey, a turtle, and a spider, which were filmed on set and remain its most indefensible and shocking element. Upon its release, Italian authorities seized the film and charged Deodato with obscenity. The real bombshell dropped when rumors swirled that the on-screen deaths of the actors were real. Deodato was forced to court, where he faced a potential life sentence. To prove his innocence, he had to sign a contract with the cast, break it in court, and then bring the actors, including the actress who played the iconic impaled woman, onto a television show to prove they were alive and well. The film was banned in over 40 countries, including the UK, where it became a poster child for the video nasty moral panic. Decades later, it's been reevaluated as a scathing critique of sensationalist media and colonial violence, with its final message asking who the real cannibals are: the tribespeople or the civilized filmmakers who exploited them? It's a tough, often repulsive sight, but its raw power and influence on the found footage genre are undeniable. You can now watch the uncut version on various horror streaming platforms if you have the stomach for it. 10. The Widow's Village, 1988. In the late 1980s, China was a nation in transition, cautiously opening up to the world while grappling with deeply ingrained conservative values. Into this tightrope walk came The Widow's Village, a film that dared to shine a light on the darkest corners of feudal tradition. The movie is set in a remote fishing community in 1949, where women are subjected to a horrifying set of rules. They cannot live with their husbands until they become pregnant, and for the first 3 years of marriage, they are only allowed to sit the night while fully clothed. To enforce this, women are marked with a tattoo-like symbol, a modern-day chastity belt. Failure to conceive after 3 years means public shaming and being pressured to commit suicide by drowning. This was not the stuff of mainstream Chinese cinema, which typically favored revolutionary epics and lighthearted comedies. The film's unflinching look at female oppression, its subtle exploration of desire, and its critique of blind adherence to ancestral rules were explosive. The studio, sensing both its artistic merit and its controversial potential, made a bold move. They marketed it as mainland China's first adults-only film, putting up signs outside theaters warning, "Not suitable for minors." This was a marketing masterstroke. The film became a massive box office hit, with tickets reportedly being scalped for inflated prices in major cities like Harbin. But the authorities were not amused. The local industry and commerce bureau in one city fined the studio 2,000 yuan, a significant sum then, for obscene, absurd content and deceiving consumers. It even sparked China's first-ever movie publicity lawsuit. While it won the prestigious 100 Flowers Award for Best Picture, the controversy effectively buried it. Today, it stands as a fascinating time capsule, a bold piece of social commentary that was simply too ahead of its time for 1980s China. You can find it on Chinese streaming platforms, a powerful and forgotten piece of film history. 9. Anthropophagus, 1980. The 1980s video boom in the UK was a Wild West, a loophole-filled marketplace where unregulated horror films found their way into homes and onto the video nasties list. And few films on that infamous list were as gleefully grotesque as Joe D'Amato's Anthropophagus. The plot is standard slasher fare. A group of tourists, including a pregnant woman, get stranded on a remote Greek island where a disfigured, cannibalistic killer is picking them off one by one. But D'Amato wasn't interested in subtlety. He was aiming for pure, gut-wrenching shock value. The film is a masterclass in grimy, atmospheric horror, but it's infamous for 2 specific scenes of unflinching gore. One involves a character being disemboweled, their intestines unspooled and devoured. The other, and the one that truly cemented its notoriety, is the climax where the killer, the titular Anthropophagus, or flesh-eater, attacks the pregnant woman and proceeds to bite into and eat the fetus ripped directly from her womb. It was this scene in particular that had British censors and moral crusaders like Mary Whitehouse reaching for their smelling salts. The film was prosecuted and placed on the DPP's list of 72 prosecutable video nasties, making it illegal to sell or rent for years. While it was eventually passed in heavily cut form in the early 2000s, its uncut version remained a forbidden fruit. Critics at the time dismissed it as vile, depraved trash, but horror fans embraced its transgressive spirit. Today, it's considered a high-water mark of the Italian gore genre, a film with a unique, sun-drenched dread and a commitment to practical effects that is both repulsive and, in a strange way, impressive. Its legacy is that of a film that went too far, defining the very limits of what audiences could handle and becoming a benchmark for on-screen brutality. You can now watch the fully restored, uncut version on Blu-ray and streaming services, a gory relic from a time when horror was truly dangerous. 8. The Last Temptation of Christ, 1988. Martin Scorsese, a filmmaker synonymous with Catholic guilt and urban violence, took on his most personal and controversial project with The Last Temptation of Christ. This wasn't your father's biblical epic. Based on the novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, the film portrays Jesus not as a serene, otherworldly deity, but as a man racked with doubt, fear, and very human temptations. He struggles with his divine mission, questions his sanity, and even imagines a life where he marries Mary Magdalene and raises a family. This humanization of Christ was enough to ignite a firestorm of protest that few films have ever matched. Long before its release, religious groups denounced it as blasphemous. Universal Pictures, which had funded the film, even dropped it, fearing a backlash. When it finally hit theaters, the protests turned violent. A Christian fundamentalist group in Paris threw Molotov cocktails at a cinema showing the film, injuring 13 people. In the U.S., protesters blockaded theaters and major chains refused to screen it. The film was banned in several countries and condemned by the Catholic Church. Scorsese, a lifelong Catholic, received death threats. The controversy completely overshadowed the film's artistic merits, which are considerable. Willem Dafoe delivers a raw, vulnerable performance as Jesus, and the film is a deeply spiritual and philosophical exploration of faith, sacrifice, and the nature of divinity. It asks profound questions. What does it mean to be both human and divine? What is the ultimate sacrifice? For decades, it was a film known more for the outrage it caused than for its content, but time has been kind to it. Today, it's widely regarded as one of Scorsese's most personal and powerful works, a challenging masterpiece that invites viewers to contemplate their own faith. You can now watch it on major streaming platforms, a film that dared to ask the ultimate questions and paid the price for its audacity. 7. Flower and Snake Series, 1980s. In the bubble economy of 1980s Japan, a unique and controversial film genre thrived, the pinku eiga, or pink film. These were low-budget erotic films that often explored transgressive themes. The Flower and Snake series, based on the sadomasochistic novels of Oniroku Dan, was the crown jewel of this movement, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable on screen. The films, particularly the first installment in 1985 starring the iconic Naomi Tani, follow the story of a wealthy wife who is abducted and systematically subjected to various forms of bondage, humiliation, and torment by her husband and his associates as part of a twisted power game. This wasn't just about depicting intimate acts. It was a deep, often uncomfortable dive into the psychology of power, submission, and desire. The films were beautifully shot, almost like an art house exploration of shibari, the Japanese art of erotic rope bondage. But their explicit content and non-consensual themes made them a prime target for censors. The first film was banned in Japan and faced significant legal challenges. Critics were divided, with some dismissing it as high-class pornography, while others, including some feminist scholars, saw it as a complex allegory for the patriarchal structures and corporate conformity of 1980s Japanese society. The wife's ordeal could be read as a metaphor for the individual's struggle against oppressive systems. Naomi Tani's performance, in particular, in Dayon, was hailed for its intensity and for finding a strange sense of agency in her character's suffering. The series became a massive underground success, spawning numerous sequels and remakes over the decades. It remains a cultural touchstone in Japan, a series that challenged taboos and forced a conversation about the intersection of art, desire, and exploitation. Today, the Flower and Snake films are available on specialty streaming services dedicated to world cinema, a challenging but essential look at a unique chapter in film history. 6. Absurd, 1981. If Anthropophagus was the art house gore film, its 1981 follow-up, Absurd, was the bare-knuckles, no-holds-barred slasher. Also directed by Joe D'Amato and starring the hulking George Eastman as the killer, Absurd ditches the atmospheric dread for pure, unadulterated brutality. The plot, such as it is, involves a mute, invincible killer with regenerative powers who escapes from a medical lab and goes on a rampage in a suburban American town. He stalks a family, including a young girl in a wheelchair, leading to a series of increasingly gruesome set pieces. The film is essentially a slasher film stripped of all pretense. There's no real mystery, no character development, just a relentless parade of gore. A man gets a bandsaw to the head. A woman gets a drill through her skull. The killer picks up his own severed head and puts it back on. It's ridiculous, over the top, and utterly shameless. Unsurprisingly, this made it a prime target for the UK's video nasty Crusaders. The film was not only placed on the Director of Public Prosecution's list, but was actually one of the few that was successfully prosecuted for obscenity. The video version was withdrawn and remained banned for years. Unlike some other films on the list that were later passed with cuts, Absurd lingered in forbidden territory, its reputation growing as a legend of extremity. Critics savaged it, calling it senseless and depraved. But for a certain breed of horror fan, its unrelenting nastiness was its main appeal. It's a film that exists purely to shock, a testament to an era when filmmakers could get away with almost anything on video. Today, it's viewed through a lens of ironic appreciation, a so-bad-it's-good classic that represents the absolute peak of gory, nonsensical slasher madness. You can find the uncut version on Blu-ray and horror streaming services, a piece of nasty video history that still packs a disgusting punch. 5. Eden no Umi, 1986. Not all banned films from the 1980s were filled with gore and guts. Some were banned for their quiet, poetic, and deeply challenging explorations of human relationships. Eden no Umi, Sea of Eden, directed by the Japanese master Tatsumi Kumashiro, is one such film. Kumashiro was a leading figure in the Roman porno genre, a line of artistic and often critically acclaimed erotic films produced by the Nikatsu studio. But with Eden no Umi, he created something more melancholic and ambiguous. The film tells the story of a complex, forbidden love affair set against the backdrop of post-war Japan. It explores themes of memory, loss, and the search for connection in a world scarred by trauma. The film is filled with beautiful, haunting imagery and a sense of poetic longing that elevates it far above typical exploitation fare. However, its frank depiction of intimacy and its refusal to offer easy moral judgments about its characters' actions made it a target for censors. The film was banned in several countries for its adult themes and was difficult to see even in Japan for many years. It didn't help the film's prospects that it was quiet and introspective, lacking the sensationalism of other controversial films. It simply slipped through the cracks, a forgotten masterpiece. In recent years, however, there has been a reappraisal of Kumashiro's work, and Eden no Umi has been rediscovered by a new generation of cinephiles. It is now recognized as a deeply moving and beautifully crafted film, a sensitive portrayal of human frailty and desire. Its ban feels like a mistake, a case of censorship misunderstanding artistic intent. You can now find it on Japanese film archives and specialty streaming sites, a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. It's a reminder that sometimes the most shocking films are the ones that dare to show us the quiet, complicated truths of the human heart. 4. The Vanished Phantom, 1985. Some films are banned for their content, while others are banned for their ideas. The Vanished Phantom, a little-known Japanese film directed by the enigmatic Shinichi Takahashi, falls squarely into the latter category. Set in the chaotic aftermath of World War II, the film follows a traumatized veteran who returns to his home village only to find it under the thumb of a corrupt mayor and his Yakuza allies. As he begins to investigate the disappearance of a childhood friend, he uncovers a web of conspiracy, greed, and betrayal that goes to the very heart of the post-war Japanese establishment. The film was a bold, angry piece of social commentary, a thinly veiled allegory for the real-life political corruption scandals that rocked Japan in the 1950s. Takahashi, a first-time director, shot the film in a stark, neo-realist style, using non-professional actors and real locations to create a sense of gritty authenticity. The film's power lay in its unflinching critique of power and its sympathy for the downtrodden. And that, ultimately, is what got it banned. Just before its scheduled release in 1985, the Japanese government, citing concerns about harming the national image, intervened. The film was pulled from theaters, and its negative was ordered to be partially destroyed. It was a devastating blow, and the vanished phantom effectively vanished, becoming a ghost story whispered about by film buffs. For decades, it was considered a lost film, with only a few battered bootleg copies circulating among collectors. But recently, a complete print was discovered in a forgotten archive and has been meticulously restored. 3. Guinea Pig. 2. Flower of Flesh and Blood, 1985. If the first guinea pig film was a grim experiment, its sequel, Flower of Flesh and Blood, was a full-blown descent into artistic, blood-soaked madness. Directed by Hideshi Hino, a legendary horror manga artist, this short film abandons the series' thin narrative pretext and becomes a pure, abstract nightmare. The plot is minimal. A woman dressed as a geisha is captured by a samurai-clad man, who then proceeds to dismember her with extreme and meticulous precision. The film is shot in a surreal, brightly lit style, with vibrant reds against stark white backgrounds, making it look less like a snuff film and more like a grotesque, moving painting. Hino brought his manga aesthetic to life, creating a sequence of images that are both horrifying and bizarrely beautiful. The gore is relentless and creative, culminating in the killer adding the woman's severed eye to his collection. This was the film that truly put the Guinea Pig series on the global map, and it was also the one that caused the most trouble. The legend of Charlie Sheen watching it and calling the FBI is most famously associated with this entry. The story goes that Sheen, believing it to be a real snuff film, was so horrified he contacted the authorities, who then launched an investigation into the filmmakers. As with the first film, the producers had to prove in court that the effects were just that, effects. The film was banned in numerous countries and became the ultimate bootleg tape, a film that was spoken about in hushed, reverent tones by horror fans. 2. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. While technically released in 1978, I Spit on Your Grave became a defining film of the 1980s home video era and a central figure in the video nasty panic in the UK. Directed by Mir Zarchi, this American rape revenge film is one of the most relentlessly grim and uncomfortable viewing experiences in cinema history. The film follows Jennifer, a young writer who rents a cabin in the woods to work on her first novel. She is brutally assaulted by a group of local men, an assault that is depicted in a prolonged, graphic, and exploitative 25-minute sequence. Left for dead, she survives and embarks on a campaign of brutal and systematic revenge against her attackers, killing each one in a manner that mirrors their own crimes. The film was immediately controversial. Critics like Roger Ebert famously called it a vile bag of garbage, condemning its graphic violence and what they saw as its celebration of revenge. In the UK, it was banned as a video nasty and remained so for years, with its uncut version not receiving a certificate until the 21st century. The debate over the film has raged for decades. Is it a deeply misogynistic piece of exploitation that revels in the suffering of women? Or is it, as its director has claimed, a feminist statement about a woman taking back power from her attackers? There is no easy answer. 1. Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Pier Paolo Pasolini's final film, Salo, is arguably the most controversial and artistically ambitious film ever made. Adapted from the Marquis de Sade's infamous novel, Pasolini transposed the story to the final days of fascist Italy in 1944. The film follows four wealthy, powerful libertines who kidnap a group of teenagers and subject them to 120 days of systematic psychological and physical torture, humiliation, and murder, all while being forced to listen to stories of depravity told by prostitutes. The film is structured in three parts: the circle of manias, the circle of excrement, and the circle of blood, each escalating in horror. This is not a horror film designed to make you jump. It's a cold, detached, and clinical depiction of absolute power and its inevitable corruption. The film was banned in numerous countries upon its release, including Italy, where Pasolini was charged with obscenity and given a suspended prison sentence. The controversy was immediate and intense, with many condemning it as pure filth. These films weren't just trying to shock, they were pushing cinema into new territories of expression and challenging audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about society and human nature. Which banned masterpiece do you think was unfairly censored, and which ones do you believe went too far? Is there such a thing as going too far in art, or should all creative expression be protected, regardless of content? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's debate where the line should be drawn between artistic freedom and exploitation.